Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it smiles. It hides in charm, in politeness, in fake concern. The most dangerous people are not the ones who attack you directly. They're the ones who slowly poison your peace while pretending to protect it. They twist your words, drain your energy, and leave you questioning your worth. But there are signs, clear ones, and if you miss them, you risk letting darkness too close. Stay with me until the end, because the final sign is the one almost everyone overlooks, and it's the one that always comes before the damage is done. They drain you without saying a word. Not all evil shouts. Not all danger is obvious. Some of the most damaging people you'll ever meet won't raise their voice. They won't insult you directly. They won't even break your trust in ways you can easily explain. Instead, they drain you. Quietly, skillfully, without ever touching your skin, they touch your spirit. You don't notice it at first. You excuse the heaviness. You rationalize the confusion. You tell yourself you're overthinking. But you're not. You're feeling something real. The invisible theft of your energy. These people don't walk into your life to connect, they walk in to consume. They don't want your growth, they want your glow. And the second you begin shining a little brighter, thinking a little clearer, standing a little taller, they move in. Not with obvious sabotage, but with subtle shifts. A tone, a look, a pause that makes you question yourself. They'll say all the right words but leave you feeling all the wrong things. And that's the trick. Their power isn't in what they say. It's in what they make you feel, or more dangerously, what they make you doubt about yourself. You'll leave conversations with them feeling tired, but you won't know why. You feel smaller, but they'll swear they were just joking. You question your own perceptions, but they'll say you're being sensitive. These people are not just draining your energy, they're rearranging your self-trust, rewiring your nervous system, not by accident, but by design. And if you keep them close, over time you'll start to notice. You no longer speak with clarity. You no longer move with certainty. You no longer laugh with the same freedom. Because their presence has created a distortion field around you, and in that distortion, your soul slowly dims. This is not love. This is not connection. This is energetic possession. And the only way to recognize it is to stop focusing on their words and start tuning into your own body. Because your body knows before your mind does. Your breath tightens. Your stomach turns. Your spirit shrinks. That is truth. That is your warning system. That is the ancient intelligence inside you saying, this person does not feed you, they feed on you. But most people ignore it. They stay. They explain. They try to love harder, and in doing so, they continue handing over pieces of themselves to someone who will never be full, because their hunger is spiritual. It's endless. They don't just want your time. They want your focus. They want your light. They want your doubt, because your doubt is their access point. And once they have it, they don't need to scream. They just sit, right there in your energy, until your silence becomes confusion, your kindness becomes exhaustion, and your identity becomes dependent on their approval. You must learn to exit energy like this immediately. No debate, no explanation. You do not owe closure to someone who is never honest with their presence. You don't need a reason that makes sense to them. You need clarity that makes sense to you. And clarity doesn't always come from logic. It comes from sensation, from intuition, from the undeniable truth of how you feel after being around someone. If you feel lighter, clearer, stronger, they are aligned. If you feel smaller, confused, drained, they are dangerous. So trust the feeling. Leave the table where your soul isn't fed. Walk out of rooms that cost you more than they give. Detach from connections that rewrite your identity just to keep your attention. You are not here to be consumed. You are not here to be doubted into submission. You are here to build, to breathe, to expand. And no real connection will ever make you question your right to do exactly that. They drain you without saying a word. Not all harm is loud. Not all destruction comes with a warning. Some of the most damaging people in your life won't scream, won't insult, won't raise a hand. They'll sit across from you with a smile, speak softly, nod at the right moments, and still leave you feeling empty. Not because of what they said, but because of what they took. These are not people who connect. They're people who consume. You won't see it in their language. You'll feel it in your nervous system. You'll leave the conversation feeling like you need to explain yourself, but you're not sure why. Like you've done something wrong, but nothing was actually said. Like you're shrinking in your own skin. That's not anxiety, that's energetic distortion. and it's real. These people don't attack your identity head-on. They don't come for your achievements. They come for your clarity. They poke holes in your confidence. They twist just enough to make you second-guess what you once knew. And they do it without ever raising their voice. This is spiritual warfare disguised as politeness. It's psychological erosion hidden beneath casual tone. It's manipulation by exhaustion. You'll notice it because after spending time with them, your light feels dimmer, your focus feels fragmented, your peace feels distant. That's not random. That's not you being overly sensitive. That's the mark of an energy vampire, someone who survives not by inspiring others, but by feeding off their vitality. They're not driven by love. They're driven by depletion. Your depletion. These people don't uplift. They absorb. They don't support. They siphon. And every time you come back thinking, maybe it'll feel different, it won't. Because it was never about connection. It was about control. They want your attention. They want your reaction. They want your presence so long as it costs you just enough to keep them full. And the most dangerous part, they don't need to say a single cruel word. Their power is subtle. Their effect is cumulative. Like a slow leak in your spirit, you don't notice it's happening until you're running on empty. But your body knows. Always. Before your mind rationalizes, before your heart makes excuses, before your ego tells you you're overreacting, your body knows. It tightens, it tenses, it pulls away, it whispers something's off. And that whisper is your warning. Most people ignore it. They stay. They justify. They try to be understanding. But you cannot heal in the presence of someone who thrives off your imbalance. The moment you feel smaller after being near someone, listen to that. That is feedback. That is information. That is your nervous system trying to lead you to safety. Because not all toxicity is obvious. Not all manipulation comes with a label. Sometimes it's just a slow draining of your aliveness until you forget who you were before they arrived. So here's the boundary. If you feel smaller, unclear, anxious, or less like you after interacting with someone, that's all the proof you need. You don't need to wait for a betrayal. You don't need to wait for something overtly wrong. You leave, not out of bitterness, but out of honor, out of self-respect, out of knowing that your energy is not up for negotiation. They pretend to care, but keep you small. Some enemies don't wear the face of hate. They wear the mask of concern. They don't come at you with open conflict. They come in the form of advice, disguised as protection, layered in phrases like, "I'm just being honest," or "I just want what's best for you." They know how to smile while cutting your wings, how to wrap manipulation in kindness, and how to speak doubt into your vision while pretending to help you be realistic. This is not love. This is control. And it's far more dangerous than any obvious attack because it comes from the people you're conditioned to trust: family, partners, friends, mentors. The very people who should be your wind end up being your weight, not through rage, but through subtle, consistent erosion. Their words aren't sharp, they're soft. Soft enough that you question yourself before you ever question them. Soft enough that they land without sounding wrong. But over time, you notice something. Your confidence weakens in their presence. Your decisions become slower. Your voice feels less certain. And the dreams you once chased with fire start to feel like fantasies. Not because they weren't real, but because someone you respected consistently taught you to doubt them. This is the psychology of subtle sabotage. It's not meant to break you. It's meant to contain you, to make you manageable, palatable, easier to be around, easier to control. And the worst part, it all sounds like care, like love, like wisdom. So you ignore the tightening in your chest. You rationalize the discomfort. You say to yourself, they mean well. And maybe they do. But meaning well and being good for you are not the same thing. There are people who will support you as long as you stay beneath them. As long as your light doesn't outshine theirs. As long as your growth doesn't make them uncomfortable. These people don't want to see you fall, but they can't bear to see you rise too far. So they keep you doubting, hesitating, shrinking, all under the banner of love. Real support doesn't shrink you. Real love doesn't tether you to someone else's comfort zone. It doesn't plant fear inside your clarity. It doesn't make you second guess your intuition. It doesn't guilt you into slowing down your evolution just so someone else doesn't feel left behind. Real love expands. It energizes. It reminds you who you are even when you forget. Especially when you forget. And if someone's presence makes you feel smaller, less certain, more dependent, it doesn't matter what they say their intention is. Their effect is the only truth that matters. This is where emotional discipline comes in. The ability to see clearly, not through emotion, not through loyalty, not through shared history, but through impact. How do you feel after the conversation, after the message, after their advice? Do you feel empowered or reduced? Do you feel grounded or off balance? Do you feel reminded of your strength or subtly pulled back into doubt? Because your nervous system will tell you the truth long before your logic does. You'll feel the constriction, the confusion, the hesitation. And if you don't listen, you'll begin to internalize their limits as your own. This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about clarifying the energy. It's about seeing that not everyone who's close is for you. It's about setting boundaries so firm that even a soft attack cannot enter. And most importantly, it's about trusting yourself again, because that's what they're stealing. Not your time, not your talent, but your self-trust. And without that, you don't need a cage, you'll stay small on your own. So watch closely, listen deeper. And when someone says, "I'm just being honest," but you feel smaller afterward, that's not truth, that's control. When someone says, "I'm saying this because I care," but their words disconnect you from your fire, that's not love, that's fear. And when someone keeps you doubting in the name of protecting you, they're not protecting you, they're protecting their comfort. Remember, not all enemies attack. Some whisper, some hug, some support you right back into your cage. They smirk when you suffer. Not all cruelty is loud. Sometimes it's a glance, a silence, a breath held too long when you speak about your pain. Sometimes it's the subtle smirk you weren't supposed to catch, the flicker of satisfaction that crosses their face when life finally humbles you. That's not your imagination. That's the mask slipping. For one brief second, they show you who they really are. Not with words, not with action, but with energy. They enjoy your collapse. They're not rooting for your growth. They've been silently waiting for your fall. This is the kind of evil most people don't want to believe exists. We're taught to look out for those who hurt us directly, who insult, attack, or abandon. But some of the most dangerous people don't throw punches. They offer support with one hand while hiding satisfaction with the other. They'll say, "I'm here for you," but something about their tone doesn't land. Their text is delayed. Their energy shifts. The warmth in their eyes disappears. And when you really need them, when you're in pain, when you're struggling, they go quiet. Not because they don't care, but because deep down they care that you're suffering. It pleases them. They may not admit it. They may not even consciously know it. But the body doesn't lie. Their reaction will tell you everything. Watch closely when life humbles you. Watch how people respond when the spotlight moves away from your wins and onto your wounds. Do they lean in with empathy, or do they lean back with silence? Do they offer support, or do they vanish into convenience? Do they send warmth, or do they go cold, neutral, indifferent? These moments are rare mirrors. You get to see people without the mask. No more performance, no more pretending. Just raw energy, and energy doesn't lie. That smirk, that delay, that sudden absence, that's not coincidence. That's your signal. That's the crack in the facade. And if you ignore it, if you rationalize it away, if you tell yourself they're just going through something or didn't know what to say, you'll invite that energy right back into your life the next time you fall. And you will fall again. Everyone does. Life has seasons. The question is, who's standing near you when the temperature drops? Good souls don't flinch when you break. They don't back away from your mess. They don't need you to be strong all the time to remain loyal. They lean in. They offer presence, not judgment. They sit beside you, not above you. And most of all, they feel your pain even when they can't fix it. That's love. That's loyalty. That's alignment. Anything else is performance. There are people in your life who only love you when you're glowing, who only cheer when you're winning, who only reach out when your name is shining. But the second you stumble, they go silent, not out of discomfort, but out of satisfaction. Because your strength always made them feel small, and your struggle, it levels the field. That's why they smirk. That's why they stay quiet. That's why they disappear when you need them the most. It's not about you. It's about what your rise made them feel. And now that you've fallen, they finally feel safe again. But here's what they don't expect: your awareness. The fact that you saw it, felt it, caught that flicker in their eye. And when you do, don't call it out. Don't explain it. Don't ask them to clarify. Just pull back, quietly, fully, with no warning and no announcement. Because once someone finds satisfaction in your suffering, no apology can clean that up. It wasn't a mistake, it was a reveal. And once revealed, they no longer deserve a seat at your table, no matter how long they've been sitting there. You don't need to create a scene. You don't need to prove anything. Just protect your space, reclaim your energy, move differently, and when you rise again, and you will rise, do it with the memory of who stood with you and who smirked when you fell. That's your circle. That's your boundary. That's your clarity. Never ignore what pain reveals. And never stay where your weakness is celebrated in secret. Because the next time you fall, they won't help you up. They'll just pretend they didn't smile. They mirror you to manipulate you. There are people who don't approach you with truth, they approach you with strategy. They study you closely. They observe your words, your tone, your interests, your rhythm. Not to connect, not to understand, but to mimic, to reflect you so precisely that you begin to trust them faster than anyone else. Because it feels like chemistry, it feels like resonance, it feels like you finally met someone who gets it. Someone who sees you, hears you, moves like you do. But what you're feeling is not a connection, it's a carefully constructed illusion. This is not love, this is not alignment, this is psychological warfare dressed up as compatibility. You're not bonding with a real person, you're bonding with a mirror. And that mirror is built not with affection, but with calculation. It's a tactic one used by people who know how to bypass your defenses without force. They make you feel seen, they make you feel safe. They adopt your values, echo your beliefs, match your language because that is how they gain access. Imitation is their mask. Familiarity is their weapon. And once you let them in, they no longer need to pretend. That's when the shift happens. You start noticing things that feel off. Their empathy fades. Their tone changes. Their opinions suddenly contradict the values they claim to share. Their responses become colder. The mirroring stops. And you're left confused not because they changed, but because you were never seeing them to begin with. You were seeing yourself reflected back by someone who only ever wanted entry, not intimacy. They weren't learning who you were. They were gathering data. And once they had enough, they turned. The damage here isn't just emotional. It's spiritual. Because this kind of manipulation breaks your internal compass. You start doubting your instincts. You second guess your ability to discern people. You feel violated, but you can't explain why. Because on the surface they didn't do anything bad. But underneath, they robbed something deeper than your trust. They robbed your clarity. And now you're tangled in confusion, wondering how someone who felt so aligned could feel so unfamiliar. That's the trap. You were never in love. You were entranced. This is how dark energy moves. It mimics the light to get through the door. It reflects goodness. It reflects virtue. It mirrors your strength so it can later weaken you from inside. Because once you reveal your dreams, your past, your values, your wounds, they know exactly where to apply pressure. Not all at once. Slowly. They'll challenge what you love. Question what you believe. Diminish what lights you up. And if you confront them, they'll flip it. You're too sensitive. You misunderstood. You're imagining things. They were just joking. Now, not only are you hurt, you're questioning your reality. That's not clumsiness. That's precision. The only antidote is awareness. You must stop falling in love with familiarity. Stop equating shared interests with shared character. Start asking better questions. Not, do they like what I like? But, how do they act when I say no? Do they mirror me to connect, or do they stand rooted in their own identity? Because real connection is not built through imitation. It's built through truth. And truth requires tension, disagreement, differentiation. Anyone who reflects you perfectly is either lying or hasn't done enough self-work to stand alone. And if they're lying, don't wait for proof. Don't confront. Don't give them a chance to explain. Just exit. Quietly. Fully. You don't owe closure to a mask. You don't need to warn someone who already knows what they're doing. You just cut the cord. You reclaim your clarity. You protect your energy. Because once someone uses your own light to disarm you, they've shown you exactly why they should never be trusted again. So trust your confusion. Trust the shift. Trust that moment when what felt like connection starts to feel like control, and move. Not because they exposed their darkness, but because you recognized it. You were never crazy. You were mirrored. And now, you're awake. Their apologies are words, not changes. You must understand something most people never will. Evil doesn't always come with a blade. Sometimes it comes with an apology, a soft tone, a tearful voice, words that sound like healing but are built to manipulate. And the most dangerous part, it works. Because when you've been hurt, your heart wants relief, your mind wants closure, and your soul wants to believe they finally understand what they did. So you hear them say, "I didn't mean it," or "You're too sensitive," or "Let's not ruin what we have." And for a moment you feel hope, you feel seen, you feel like maybe this time will be different. But if you look deeper, not at the words, but at the pattern, you'll see what's really happening. They're not apologizing to heal you, they're apologizing to reset control. This is the classic loop. Hurt, apologize, repeat. It's not accidental, it's a system, a control mechanism disguised as redemption. And most people fall for it again and again because we're conditioned to equate emotional display with sincerity. We think tears mean truth. We think soft words mean safety. But the truth is, a real apology is not a performance, it's a pivot. It doesn't ask you to forget. It doesn't rush you back into comfort. It changes direction. It shows you in action that the damage mattered, that the pain was seen, that the lesson was absorbed and is now being reflected in new behavior. But evil never gives you that. It only gives you recycled language dressed up as remorse. If you've been through this cycle, you know the signs. You open the door after they apologize, but within days or hours the same disrespect creeps back in. The same dismissiveness, the same tone, the same absence of accountability. And when you bring it up again, they act like you're the problem for not letting it go. That's the giveaway. Anyone who pressures you to move forward without real change isn't trying to rebuild trust, they're trying to re-establish dominance. They want the comfort of access without the discomfort of growth. That's not healing. That's manipulation at the highest level. Here's what makes this so deadly. It breaks your sense of reality. It conditions you to lower your expectations, to question your instincts, to accept apology as a substitute for transformation. But apology without change is emotional theft. They steal your hope, your time, your openness just to reset the same game that broke you in the first place. And the longer you stay, the more you lose. Not because you're weak, but because your heart was never trained to see the weapon hiding inside the words. So what do? You stop watching the apology